So this guy, Sami Zaatari, made a video in which he's asking atheists, what evidence would you require to get you to believe in God? And for me, I've always said that before you can even start to give evidence, you first have to give a coherent definition of what you're providing evidence for. Because a lot of theists will define God as something that created literally everything. He created everything, including all of the necessary prerequisites for existence itself. And they usually say that God is this free agent who could have decided not to create anything if he didn't want to. Which implies that God is capable of existing in a state in which time and space, matter and energy, all of the things that are necessary for existence do not exist. As such, I think most definitions that are given for God are self-contradictory. You'll often hear theists say that God's existence is spaceless and timeless, which is exactly semantically equivalent to saying that God exists nowhere and never. But let's say that God is just some kind of consciousness that exists in the universe and has control over it. Now there are logical problems with that definition as well, but it's the most coherent one I can come up with. Then you would have to show some evidence of this consciousness. Now consciousness itself is something that's a little bit difficult to prove. For instance, you can't prove with absolute certainty that anybody other than yourself is conscious. We conclude that other people are conscious via inductive reasoning. We figure that I'm a human being and I am having conscious experiences and I act a certain way. Other people are human beings and they act a certain way, therefore it's likely that they are also experiencing the same subjective experiences that I am. That doesn't prove that other people are conscious, but it's a good reason to assume that other people are probably conscious. So how do you test something that's not human for consciousness? Well, this is a problem to which the computer scientist Alan Turing proposed a solution. If you were to, say, build a computer that you think is capable of consciousness, Turing argued that if you could interact with a computer in such a way that its behavior was indistinguishable from that of a conscious human being, then you could effectively assume that it's probably conscious. If you were to interact with a computer and that computer were to respond to you in a way that seemed like there was a human being controlling it, then assuming there wasn't actually a human being controlling it, you might as well assume it's conscious. So if you wanted to convince me that God actually exists, then you would have to demonstrate that the universe has some kind of consciousness behind it in a similar sort of way. Like you'd have to show me that you were capable of a two-way communication with God. You would have to show me that if you address God, he would respond in a way I could see, and in a way that cannot be otherwise explained by natural events. So for instance, if you were to show me evidence that prayer actually worked. Every study ever done on the efficacy of prayer has shown that if you pray for something, statistically, it is no more likely to happen than if you did not pray for it at all. If you were able to show me statistically that praying for something significantly increased the likelihood of actually getting it, that would be a good first start. So the bottom line is, if you want to convince me of God, number one, you're going to have to come up with a definition of God that actually makes sense. And number two, you're going to have to show me that God is capable of some kind of two-way interaction with human beings. Or at the very least, you would have to show that God responds to one-way communication.